The Cannabis Conversation. A European perspective on the emerging legal cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Conversation with Anuj Desai, where we explore the new legal cannabis industry by speaking to the professionals that are helping to shape it. On today's show, we've got JJ O'Brien. JJ is Chief Strategy Officer at PAX Labs. PAX, for those that don't know, is a Silicon Valley vaporizer company that make a couple of different types of vape devices, very popular in the US and Canada. Welcome, JJ.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, no, glad to have you. We're enjoying the festive cold winter in London.
We had some wonderful mulled cider last night as we walked around.
That's what makes it all worth it, I think.
It's been great.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on. PAX is obviously a massive company doing some great things in the US, but maybe not as familiar in the UK. So it'd be great to hear about what you guys are up to. But maybe we start to begin with a bit about yourself. You know, what's your backstory? Yeah. How did you start working at PAX, etc.?
Yeah, so I started my career as a kind of consultant finance junkie before going off to business school, and then kind of worked for a couple of years at Capital One in their innovation lab before deciding to make the move into cannabis. And, you know, I've been working in the space since about 2014. In 2016, I joined PAX as a general manager of our Era business, which is our, at least for now, US, but soon to be Canada, focused extract vaporizer, that was really kind of our first foray outside of our traditional PAX product line. And so my initial job was kind of helping bring that to different markets. We originally launched in California, Colorado. We're now in 18 states, and again, soon to be throughout Canada, except for Quebec for right now. And then, yeah, helping think about kind of the future of the company as we think about the industry, how it plays out and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's been great.
Great. I mean, part of the theme of my show is actually talking about career change. Have you found that transition from a very kind of, let's say, conservative financial services background over to the crazy world of cannabis?
Yeah, it's funny. I graduated business school in 2011 out in the Bay Area. And when I graduated, I remember thinking, my friends were like, oh, you should get in cannabis. I've been a medicinal patient since I moved out there. I was like, well, it's super interesting, but it didn't really, it felt like a career risk. It felt like you're not really sure how this is going to be.
Is it real?
Is it real? Are there real businesses there? Can you go raise money? Can you do this? And I remember in 2014, you know, January of that year, Colorado started recreational sales for the first time. And by that summer, Washington had opened up as well. You know, they had been voted in 2012. And at that point in time, most folks were kind of a bit unaware of like how this was all going to look. Was the federal government really going to let them just like sell cannabis into stores? And, you know, and so by this point in late 2014, when I kind of decided to make the jump into the space, I had felt that there was kind of no going back from where we were going. It seemed like there was enough forward momentum. You know, people were starting to raise money. There were investors looking to put money to work in the space. Now, not a ton, but there were some. And I remember being like, no, like this is real. This is like going to be a place where I can, you know, use this very expensive MBA that I just paid for and, you know, and put it to work and put it to work in new and interesting ways. You know, it's interesting to me, especially coming from Silicon Valley, going to business school in Silicon Valley in like kind of, you know, 2010, 2011-ish time period. And, you know, everything was tech. Everybody had an app idea. Everybody wanted to create this. It was, and that industry tech is, you know, you come out with a product or an idea. And if you're really innovative, if you're like Facebook creating social networks, you know, Mark Zuckerberg probably, when he was in his dorm room at Harvard, didn't have the fully baked out business plan and couldn't really predict with a ton of clarity how Facebook was going to look in 10 years' time. You know, what they would create, that he'd be testifying in front of Congress, that, you know, you think of and you had no clue to predict how that would, you could predict the next couple of years, you could predict what user engagement and all that would look like, but you couldn't really predict that big picture. You know, cannabis is the opposite. In my opinion, like it's very easy for us to sit back and say, this is what the market's going to look like in a fully legalized environment in however many years we think that is. The hurdle is that nobody knows when that's going to come, how long it's going to take, what that process and what that in between is. It's much harder in cannabis to try to figure out what 2 years looks like than 20 years looks like.
Yeah.
Because this is a consumer product.
Yeah.
And it looks going to look a lot like a lot of other consumer products, whether it be alcohol or maybe tobacco or maybe neither of them. But, it's going to be a consumer product. People are going to want to enjoy it with friends. They want to enjoy it out of home. They want to, and you can kind of see how that looks like. But, that in between, which we're living right now and going to continue to live for the indefinite future, is the part where it's like, oh.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it exciting.
Exactly. Definitely makes it exciting, I think. And the things that are happening in the US, state versus federal, is a similar pattern to what's happening in Europe in terms of zero harmonization. But it makes it interesting because there's lots of opportunities in the margins and how everyone's doing it slightly differently. So, yeah.
But I think, the tough part about that is that even in the US, while people think of it as this very developed market, for cannabis, it is extremely developed. It is still not federally legal. It is still governed exclusively on the state level. Product can't move across state lines. So, you buy a product in Massachusetts, that product was grown in Massachusetts. Guess what? It's a lot easier and nicer to grow cannabis, in Northern California or in coastal, high desert Washington. But, you have to buy it in Massachusetts grown indoors and, by folks who've only doing it for 18 months. And so there's just all of these kind of movements and it is so hyper localized and, you don't have the scale that you have. You go up to Canada and now these folks who have, access to banking, they can trade on public markets, they can get true institutional investors involved, they're scaling. And they're really at the forefront of what that side of the market looks like. What does producing cannabis at scale look like? Because, it's never really been produced at scale before.
Yeah.
It's always been hyper localized, hyper diversified, and even the early aspects within the industry were hyper. You go to California, and when I started getting into PAX in 2016, it's there were your Northern California cannabis companies and your Southern California cannabis companies. Even though the product could move and this and that, it was just UA had this. Moving the product around was always a liability. Getting people to transport it was high net worth. And so, there are people that just supplied Southern and supplied Northern. It was just, and now that's breaking down a bit, but still, in all of this stuff, it's
amazing to realize that because I'm from here. You wouldn't think that. You think there'd be people sort of covering the whole area, but
well, I think most people.
But it's a big state, though.
But I think what most people don't appreciate is California decriminalized cannabis in the late 70s. And legalized for medicinal purposes in 1996. And so that's now going on 24 years next year that medicinal cannabis has been legalized in the state of California. When they first legalized it, it was so polarizing of a topic that the state itself decided, hey, we're not going to put much effort in, we're going to let the counties do it. And so they pushed down a lot of the regulation at the county level. And what that created was huge disparities on how it was regulated, what you could do, what you couldn't do. There were things you could do in Northern California that you couldn't do in Southern California, and vice versa. Now that's not the case, but it created this hyper locality to the ecosystem as a whole. That as we are starting to see scale, that scale is tough when you can't get a working capital loan from the bank. And you need to find a way to go finance that elsewhere. And, there's these growing pains that are natural, especially when you have, when you don't have the traditional infrastructure that most industries benefit from to help support it.
There seems to be some progress in the Banking Act and things like that are sort of helping.
Cannabis is still a Schedule I controlled substance. Until that changes, only so much progress can be made.
Yeah, understood. I mean, we could talk about California for ages, but let's get back to talking a bit about PAX. So maybe you could just introduce PAX as a business, and we have Juul over here in the UK, so that's quite well known. But there was a relationship before, wasn't there, with PAX and Juul?
We were one company before. We the original product the company had launched was called the Plume vaporizer. Plume is still the number 2 e-cigarette in Japan brand, and that business was sold off to Japan Tobacco when we were after kind of the launch of the PAX 1. And then off the back of the launch of the PAX 1, we launched the Juul product alongside the PAX 2. As the Juul product started to pick up steam, we realized that it was not, these were two separate companies serving two very different needs, two very different consumer bases, and did not make sense anymore, to cohabitate. They're both vaporizers, but outside of being vaporizers, everything else about them was just so drastically different that it made no sense to. And so we, made the decision pretty early on to split the companies into, operate them as complete, separate boards, investors, all of that. And we've been that way for now, well over 2 years. And so, with that was also a drastic step in our direction towards, kind of owning a bit of our cannabis heritage. Our original product, the PAX, is a loosely vaporizer. And we really wanted with our Era product to really get closer to that kind of, cannabis heritage that people have been associating with our brand. We are a vaporizer company. We are, in essence, a hardware company. We sell our Era products to cannabis companies who then refill them and sell those back to consumers.
So you guys don't make the pods for the Aero?
No, we just make the hardware.
Right.
And we sell that hardware to what ends up being cannabis companies who then sell those on to the consumers.
Right.
And I think what we've really built our brand around, and what I always say at PAX is, we, given our heritage in the space, we launched the PAX 1 8 years ago next year. So it's coming up on its 8th anniversary next summer. And that was at a time when people would vaporize things like with a desktop vape, like blowing into a big bag. Not saying that that product isn't a fantastic product to vaporize. It's just it didn't necessarily speak to consumers that wanted a bit of discretion.
Yeah.
Wanted a bit something that felt more like other items in their home, not like this thing they had to hide whenever their friends came over.
Yeah.
And I think with that heritage and with that design, we had a 10-year warranty on our original PAX 1 that holds on our PAX 3 today. That was unheard of for cannabis, especially a vaporizer product at that time. You can go on Reddit and you see, I love doing it. You see these folks who have these 6-year-old PAX 1s that they're using almost every day. That's still trucking away. They have them design. They do that. It's just we built something that we were happy putting our name behind, happy putting a 10-year warranty behind. And people read that as well. This is a quality that we have not seen in the space to this time, especially something designed so well.
Yeah.
And I think we try to take that, especially with our Era product, in a space where there are so many different cartridge or pod-based vaporizer systems for cannabis in the U.S. Our cords are svelted, our heating coils for our Era are svelted in Sweden. They're assembled in the U.S. And all of these things kind of play at how we think about the quality and taking steps that aren't asked of us to make sure that the consumer experience is one that is the safest to our knowledge, is as best for the consumer, and putting them forward and not cutting any corners just to get a product out there to meet consumer demand.
Yeah. There's a lot there. Would you consider PAX a tech business then rather than the cannabis, or a bit of both, or neither?
We are a technology company,
yeah.
That sells hardware. Some of that hardware is used for cannabis, and some of it's not.
Right.
And that's how I think of our business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said the PAX 3 is a loose leaf vape. How kind of well understood is that in the US? Is it pretty kind of is that kind of a major consumption method?
Historically, people used use it a lot before both other options were available and not. As the legal markets have spread in the U.S., paired with folks' desire for a discrete vaporizer, there's been a lot of consumer demand for different form factors.
Yeah.
Just more from a pure convenience factor more than anything else.
Yeah.
And that's really where we see the drive, is that drive towards convenience. You are making trade-offs on the experience for sure, but
Cool. And obviously there's been a bit of a vaping crisis in the US. It's got nothing to do with your types of products, but it's more of a black market issue, to my understanding, around oil cartridges. But nonetheless, it kind of tarnishes everyone. How have you guys sort of dealt with that whole issue?
We've dealt with it by, first off, making sure that, our products are tested thoroughly. When things like the recent vape crisis hit, we were like, well, we know we don't have any vitamin E acetate, which, had come out as the main culprit, but let's make sure that there's nothing else going, and so we did a full audit of all of our customers' products. Because our customers put in different oils that we regulate and make sure they're safe. We did an audit to make sure that they were safe. We dive deeper into some other aspects of this. And so we're constantly making sure that as new information comes available, that, previous hypotheses about, the safety of our product can be validated. That we didn't have any black holes. Because that's a hurdle, is that, all of this stuff, we don't have years of scientific research to fall back upon. We're not going to have that for some time. And until we have that, no claims can really get made. Yeah. So we can only rely on, what our best effort is. And, we put a lot of effort forward. Yeah. A lot of effort forward.
Yeah. And I suppose...
And at least we... Yeah.
Yeah, and again, reaffirming that you're working with good partners, etc.
We curate curate everybody we work with, and put a heavy hand on that curation. Again, strive that, we're doing, to the best of our abilities, making sure that everything gets out there is as, top quality as possible.
So as a kind of, moving on from that, but as a ancillary business, I suppose, in the kind of cannabis sense, are you less affected by the federal state kind of misalignment?
Well, as a technology hardware product, or as a hardware consumable, in the U.S. for cannabis, and we sell our products to different, experts in producing cannabis and producing the cannabis oil that goes into our product. It allows us, given that, to work with folks in every state. Going back to the diversification thing, every one of those is experts in their market that they're working in, with sourcing the best product, with extracting, with getting into retail, all of that is so hyper-localized that, our business models, we're not going to try to do it all, nor do we want to, nor should we. No, we're going to focus on what we do best and then find the folks that are doing the best on their end and partner with them. So, it allows us to get into more markets a bit faster, and really make sure that, I believe that we can get a better product out there to consumers than, if we just try to do it all ourselves. Because it's just focus on what you're good at in this market and don't try to do too much.
Yeah, no, completely. And are you active in Canada, I suppose, obviously being neighbours, but with a different, more open regulatory regime?
Yeah, so Canada's really exciting for us. In a couple of weeks, they will legalize concentrates, edibles, and vaporizer or vape pens. So that's a really exciting time for us. That is the first federally legal market. They've had flower legalized for the last 12 months. That's been a huge success. And now we kind of get to go in and bring at least a bit of product diversification to folks up there. Yeah. So it will be great. No, it's super exciting. I love going out there and just seeing how that industry's and market's changing.
Great. I mean, as you described, a tech business, hardware business, clearly product innovation is going to be a really key part of your strategy and the kind of DNA of what you guys do. What have you got exciting things that you can or can't share with me?
I always say stay tuned. Just stay tuned. We have a couple things. A couple big things.
But maybe you can talk about it generally. Do you guys have an innovation department, R&D?
Oh yeah, no, well over half our headcount is our engineering product teams, software, hardware, and we are based in San Francisco for a reason, because that is our ethos, that is what our bread and butter is, and that's what we're known for. And so as we think of where we hold our unique place in the cannabis industry, it's being innovators in hardware, having a team that's capable of delivering on that, and really bringing new innovation to cannabis consumers. Because it's not easy, and there's not a ton of people doing it. There are a lot of people doing it, but to the extent that the investment, especially in the technology that we're bringing, given that it's hardware, is not the most straightforward or the easiest thing to kind of spin up. And so
yeah, no, I can imagine. What it kind of, not necessarily in the vaping world, but what's exciting you in the general cannabis world? I mean, there's probably loads of stuff, but if you can name a couple.
Yeah, I think, in cannabis, especially domestically, I think what excites me is, about a month ago, the first cannabis consumption lounge in the U.S. opened, about 2 miles from my house, in LA. And, you go there, they have a cannabis waitress or waiter, they have a food waiter, waitress. You can order a full menu, flour, extracts, oils, pre-rolls. You can sit there and consume at the table while you're eating, while you're chatting with friends. You can sit there for a couple hours. And to have an experience like that, where you're like, this isn't an Amsterdam coffee shop. As much as I love Amsterdam coffee shops, this was like something I pay with my credit card, that I booked a reservation online with, that I had a valet outside for, This was a very legitimate menu, totally legal, and you're like, this is cool. God, when I graduated business school, or especially college, did I ever think that I'd be sitting here this soon, having this type of experience? No way. Not even when I got into space, in 2014, I think this part was going to happen that fast.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you look at cannabis adoption, or cannabis acceptance in the U.S. has continued to grow at rather exponential rates, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, and especially across the aisle, where the majority of voters in both parties, Democrats definitely more than Republicans, but the majority of voters in both parties support legalizing cannabis on the federal level. And that's amazing. Yeah. That was not the case when I got into the industry 5 years ago at all. And to see that rapid change, to see folks realize, I think, a bit that, their previous beliefs on this were probably maybe a bit off. And maybe more just ill-informed than anything else. That they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great. If you want to go do this, go do this. And to see that and to see how that cultural change is happening is really cool and exciting. And, it is the future of this, even if, other markets around the world haven't yet to experience it yet.
I mean, everyone is sort of cottoning on at their own speed in their own slightly different way. But I agree with you. It's one of my kind of things that I find most exciting is challenging those stigmas and kind of how it's changing. The conversation has changed rapidly in the UK in the space of 18 months, 2 years since I've been kind of involved in it. So it's amazing to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Right, so now we're just on my trademark final question, which is, what did your parents say when you told them you were getting into the weed business?
So my dad said, as long as you're not doing anything illegal, then go at it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, my dad doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he's a pretty straight edge guy, and he's if you're not doing anything illegal, I don't, sure, great, awesome. My mom, the first thing she said to me, again, I grew up in Boston, she's like, oh, well, this is just like the Kennedys. JFK's father, John F. Kennedy's father, was basically in the post-prohibition alcohol trade. Yeah. And made the family money off of the re-legalization of alcohol. And so my mom was like, it's just like the Kennedys. Of course, you should totally go out and do that.
So you're going to found a political dynasty then?
Probably not. But I guess we'll see. You never know what the future holds.
That's great. That's a pretty cool reaction, actually. I suppose you're in the right place for it, though. California seems to be...
Again, my parents are rather conservative Bostonians, so they were much more welcoming than I was expecting. I didn't expect them to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I think their biggest concern was more what would their friends think?
Yeah.
And when when people asked them what I was doing, and I think at first they were a little bit timid, but not too timid, but I think they very quickly realized that everybody they were telling, friends, like family members, all that, were all like, oh, wow. Like, good on them for, like, deciding to go into that.
Yeah.
Like, and as it's matured and as it's, they totally will tell everybody what I do.
That's great.
They no reservations about it at all.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think particularly in the medical side of things and the therapeutic benefits that some people get, with that being more talked about, I think it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Cool. JJ, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been really good to have you on the show.
It's been great to be here.